Hello, 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 everybody. Thank you guys all coming to Real Estate Power Play. We go live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We used to go noon and we had it recording, but now we're actually recording stuff live because we're getting a lot of people engaging, asking questions whenever we have guests on or if we're talking. So if you're listening to us or watching us now, please share. If you're listening to any of on your favorite podcast, please like, share, and we'll go from there. But today, I am super excited. We have Nick on from I always say Pad Split. I always get that
Yeah,
backwards. How you doing, Nick? You doing all
good.
right?
Mark, how are you?
Doing wonderful, doing wonderful. How was your holiday weekend?
It was great. It got a lot of sun. We had fantastic weather out here in Colorado, so it was nice to, you know, get some mental clarity and get back into work. How about you?
Yeah. So yeah, it was nice. It was I live in Florida and you guys Memorial Day is the nice time of year and where you guys are up north and in the mountains. So it's kind of like, for us, that's like October Halloween. From Halloween on for us, it's like, yay. I lived up north, so I know up in Vermont, I grew up in the mountains. So Memorial Day was always a special, it's the beginning of the beautiful weather, enjoying it, allergy season with all that stuff. So well, thanks for coming back on. We actually I had you on in my coaching call, and we actually forgot to hit record during that session. So I'm glad that you're back on, so I can actually get this over to my students in the group.
Yeah.
So thanks for much for coming back on. I love this model, and that's why I wanted to kind of get you back on, especially for you listeners. This is an amazing exit strategy to if you're doing like a seller financing, if you're going to rent it, hold it as a rental, even if you want to acquire it through what's called a lease option. I call it sandwich lease option. It's like an arbitrage where you actually go under contract with the seller as a lease option or a rent to own, allowing you to sublet it and run it as any type of situation. Or if you already have a property that you're currently owning now and you want to kind of maximize your profit. So this is an amazing model. And Nick, I'm just going to kind of let you jump in and I'll probably ask you some questions along the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've been working with a lot of creative financing students over the past year, specifically because we might be a model they might have not have heard of. They do a lot of short-term rentals, maybe long-term rentals, but we kind of fit in the middle, and we can maximize a lot of assets that you never would have thought possible, right? Your B and C class areas, and we'll dig into that in a little bit. No, it's always a pleasure to be on with you, Mark, and I appreciate people like you who offer people so many creative solutions in real estate in general. And candidly, that's what I'm trying to do as an investor myself. I'm trying to find out some new creative solutions to build my portfolio. So thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you do.
I appreciate it. All right, I'll go ahead and share the screen here. So, you guys are listening. We're going to try to be detailed as possible if you're listening on the podcast, but we're actually pulling up some slides and we'll try to explain everything so you can listen to it. But if you have some questions and you want to go back and look at some of these slides afterwards, you can go over to the YouTube channel, Real Estate Power Play. We are live now, so you have to give it a couple weeks, and then our editing team will get it up live. But go ahead. I'm just going to share the screen now for you, Nick.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to explain it too for your listeners. So, Pad Split, who we are in a nutshell, this is the 1,000-foot view of our company, essentially. So, we're the world's largest workforce co living company. We're in about 14 cities now. This is an outdated slide, so the people listening will hear the updated numbers. We have about 7,000, I think 7,200 units, which is the bedrooms we rent on our platform. And we have about 17,000 tenants in our marketplace, which we call members. So it's really cool to see the growth over the past, we were founded in 2018. So whatever that math is, it's really cool to see the growth. People are really adopting medium-term solutions now with these higher interest rates. You need to outperform interest rates, yields are compressing. So we're something that maximizes that potential for a lot of your properties. So these are some of the cities, and I'll highlight these verbally as well. So Atlanta is our founding city in 2018. We were founded there. It's our largest city. We have the biggest market share there. Really incredible outcomes. Just a side note, I had someone who listed a property, 6 bedrooms on the east side of Atlanta, and it filled up in 24 hours. So really, really cool response there. Circling around the map, we'll start north. We'll go Kansas City, Baltimore, which are 2 brand new markets for us, Richmond, which is more of an established market. Moving down to, Mark's area, Florida, we're down in Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, and Miami. Miami is opening up this year. New Orleans, Dallas markets, we have Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. And then going out west, we have Phoenix and Las Vegas. So these are the core markets that we're in, and we'll get into a little bit later why these are important. Essentially, we're full bore there. We have all our marketing pieces in place. So again, what we are is we're the nation's largest shared housing marketplace. And the way I like to think about it is it's a two-sided marketplace. You as the investor have your property you can list. You can list your rooms for rent with a description and a picture. The other side of that is the workforce that we cultivate and enroll into PadSplit. So our mission is to leverage housing as a vehicle for financial empowerment while helping solve the affordable housing crisis one room at a time. And it's really important to note that the unaffordable housing crisis is a big problem, but that target demographic is someone that no one's really tackled before, right? It can be really challenging learning how to learn the ropes in that industry, and we've done a tremendous job in order to bring them out of poverty, give them more affordable solutions, and provide our investors with a tenant base, which is the workforce. So we really combine all those things into one. Again, our biggest value prop is a technology that PadSplit provides. We're a two-sided dashboard, like I mentioned before, but the technology is what allows investors to scale. It allows someone like me who lives in Colorado to own two PadSplit properties, one in Atlanta and one in Orlando. I have 12 tenants to my name, and I never thought that would ever be possible. But PadSplit makes it very possible for anyone at any level of real estate investing to kind of capitalize on that. We have someone like a mom and pop, a small investor like myself who owns two properties, and our biggest client is a family office based out of New York that does $30 million a year in finding and renovating PadSplit properties. So we work with every
Wow.
spectrum. Yeah, it's really incredible.
How long ago did they start with you all?
They were very early adopters. I want to say 2020 they started. They started in the Atlanta market and the Jacksonville market. So they acquire off-market properties, buy, renovate, get them on the PadSplit platform, and take in the cash flow essentially. But yeah, predominantly Atlanta and Jacksonville markets. They find a lot of good off markets there. So it's impressive what they do. So what we do, PadSplit's biggest value prop, again, is that technology piece, but what comes with that technology piece, right? So you have marketing. We do the marketing in all of our core areas, paid marketing, right? I always have investors and people come to me saying, oh, okay, I can utilize your platform, but what about the marketing piece? We do that as well, which is a major value prop. Member screening, background check, credit check, employment verification, member management. So we handle member disputes, move in, move out times, payments, and collections is probably the biggest thing that I think is most valuable of what we do. Our collections team collects on a 97% rate throughout our platform. We have late fees assessed that go directly to the investor. Our payments collection team just does a really, really good job of centralizing all that. We also have onboarding and consultation, and that's what my role is as a sales rep in PadSplit. I essentially get you from step 0 to cash flowing property operating every month, right? So I'm with you every step of that process, whether you want to acquire new properties, we can go through buy boxes in different areas. If you have existing inventory in an area that we're already located in, we can see if it fits well. I can run an analysis and give you some numbers on it. And my job is to really be like a concierge, a PadSplit concierge is how I like to refer myself. So who is renting from who is renting PadSplit rooms, right? Who is the workforce that I keep talking about? A lot of people give me that question. And the way I like to lay it out is like anyone making 30 to 50K in any industry really is our target demographic. Someone looking for a more affordable option in the city that they work in is who we want to rent PadSplit rooms. So some of these people work at, your airports, your FedEx operations, your Amazon facilities, that blue collar workforce who needs more affordable options. That's essentially our target demographic. And again, why do they go to PadSplit instead of renting rooms? We have rooms on the platform in Houston and in Jacksonville where there already are some affordable options, right? A 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in Houston is pretty affordable. But what we do offer is all utilities included. We offer no first and last month's payment, which a lot of apartments have to have. And we don't have a minimum credit score. So those are some incentives that we can offer that other places don't. And even though the baseline revenue is probably the same, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath is still affordable. You still don't get all those options that PadSplit can offer. So that's why people tend to choose to rent with PadSplit, and we can keep our rooms more filled than a lot of other, platforms. So again, what we do for our tenants is we provide furnished bedrooms. We provide utilities, we provide telemedicine services, employment services, credit score boosting, 24/7 member support, a ton of incentives for our member side. And the reason we do that is because we want to keep these rooms filled and we want to keep our investors happy, right? So when we're aligning both of those incentives, Pad Split essentially is doing its job correctly. Now, this is an interesting, a lot of people come and when I'm talking about Pad Split, they say, what does Pad Split manage? Are you guys full property management? Do you take the trash out? Things like this. What Pad Split does is it generates and screens tenants and it manages collections and member disputes, right? What the host is responsible for, what you as the investor are responsible for is the physical side of your asset, which is a good way to think about it, right? You are acquiring or you're using active inventory. You're typically doing some sort of renovation. You're furnishing the property and then you're listing it on Pad Split. And then Pad Split takes over that piece that deals with the tenants, right? As far as cleaning and lawn maintenance and those physical sides, that would again be on the investor. So there is some differentiation there. Some people put additional property management on it. Both of my properties, I do one of each. In my Atlanta property, I have property management that does the physical side. They actually handle my dashboard too. So it's as passive as you could possibly be. If you're an investor that wants to be completely hands off and just take a check-in, that's something you can do. My Orlando property, I actually self-manage that one. So when I get a maintenance ticket on the platform, they say there's a leaky sink in the second bathroom. I send a plumber out there. So I'm a little more hands-on, saving a little bit more percentage, but it is more hands-on. So just to let you understand, there's a couple ways you can utilize this. Now, this is something that I wish your podcast guests could see. And I would highly suggest to go back and find the video recording of this. If you're listening, you need to go back and see this slide. This is a slide that's very powerful. Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
This is what really gets me. Like, and if you can see it, it's just an example. It just shows a house diagram, and this particular house is a 4-bedroom. Was it 2-bath? I'm assuming 3-bath, possibly.
4-bed, 3-bath originally.
Got it. So originally, right. So this is just awesome. So this is a regular residential home, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. But I'll let you kind of explain what you did here when you went through the construction. But this right here is just so powerful.
Yeah, this is the thing that's super interesting. And when I first found out about Pad Split, that appealed the most to me. It was like, okay, you're really utilizing a multifamily model on a single family asset. And what I mean is we're converting common areas. Now, traditionally, if you have single family rentals, your dining room and your living room provide diminishing returns. They get damaged by tenants over time. If you have a core family with 2 kids are going to damage those areas. People are going to leave bags in the living room table and the dining room table. So our thought in Pad Split is instead of blocking these rooms off or accepting those diminishing returns, you can optimize that square footage and make it into a unit. So converting a dining room into an additional bedroom and converting a living room into additional bedroom. Now in this model, instead of operating with 4 beds, you convert those and, we actually split the 4th bedroom to get another one. So you have 7 total bedrooms on the house with 3 baths. Now, what that does is twofold. You're maximizing that square footage and you're collecting much more net revenue than you would before on a single family rental. So you're really exploding that net revenue without doing too much work, right? A lot of the thought process to assess the affordability crisis has been to build, right? And we tried to build through COVID and then we had supply shortage chain issues. So it's been a very slow and costly process doing that. Our CEO's thought was, we don't have to build. We have existing square footage in this older inventory built in the 70s. These homes were overbuilt at the time. Everyone wanted, 2,500, 3,000 square foot for a family of 3 to 4, which is just honestly too much space in a lot of the cases. So now we're utilizing this, converting them to additional bedrooms and operating on that unit count, right? Again, multifamily model on a single family asset. Your acquisition is much more attainable because you're in the single family sphere. So you can typically acquire for a lower cost than a multifamily property. But now you're utilizing the multifamily model and you're getting those multifamily returns. Hopefully I explained that well, Mark. You can feel free to pop in there if you want to. Again, it's a very powerful image. And I like to explain it because, it's just something that I thought was super interesting when I ventured into Pad Split.
It really is. So you're taking the living room and you're converting it into two more bedrooms, but you're also taking one of the bigger bedrooms and making it a little bit smaller to create another room. Is that what you're doing here?
That's what we did here. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. No, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like it's just think of a house. If anybody's listening, think of a house, and you see how a living room is, and they're splitting it up and adding two more bedrooms to it. It's amazing. I thought that was genius.
Yeah, and what a lot of people do, and what I've done in the past is typically frame it out like you normally would, right? So drywall framing, you put a door there. Mostly, typically, it's just 90 degrees, two walls for an addition. You're not adding electricity, you're not adding HVAC, so it's a very temporary solution, but it feels standard, right? You walk in there, it feels like, oh, the house was made like this. But you could essentially take those walls down if you wanted an exit strategy to sell a single family. And I always tell my GCs this: I'm like, hey guys, look, I need you to build these walls and make these additional rooms, but I need to be able to take them down in 2 weeks if I want to sell this at a single family value, right? So it's a very temporary solution that feels more fixed, but it serves a great purpose. All right. So, and this is what I didn't show you last time, Mark. This is a little bit of a surprise. So, our marketing team came up with a new slide, which is essentially the same idea, right? For podcast listeners, this is adding additional bedrooms, but now we have the underwriting next to it, so we can see the net profit. And I'll work through it a little bit here, just to go through this example. So, the traditional rental was a 3-1, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. Purchase price was 210. And we converted it to a 5-2. So we added a bedroom and we added 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. Again, purchase price is still 210, but your property and upfront investment is $45K for that conversion. So your total investment, instead of $2,010, is 210,000, excuse me, is now 255. So that's your all-in cost. Now the interesting thing is you can see how the annual rental income is just about 3x. So instead of $14,000, you're talking about $36,000. There are some additional costs, right? You have a pad split fee, you have your utilities. So those costs are going to come out of your basis every month and every year. But at the end of the day, your net profit is typically double or 3 times what it would be in a traditional single family rental. So a little bit more money up front. But typically that conversion will pay for itself within a 4 to 6 month span. And every time I've done underwriting for a pad split deal, it's been well worth it. And again, I just like to reiterate, as far as buy box is concerned for this model, I have a lot of clients who come up to me and they say, oh, I want a 4,000 square foot house that already has 6 bedrooms. And that's not really the case, right? Typically, those are going to be in high class A areas. They're going to be very expensive to acquire. Where our bread and butter is for pad split is those B and C class areas, right? We want to be in a high rental friendly area. We want to be around public transit. We want to be on a corner lot. We want to have availability for parking, but you really want to buy an asset that's 3-2 or a 4-2 that you can convert, because you're going to be in there for a lower acquisition cost. You're going to have a slight renovation cost, but now you're maximizing that asset, right? So your cost basis up front is typically much lower than it would be for a 4,000 square foot home, right? You're just being more creative through the process.
That's like, I like that. Yeah, I didn't see that last time. So, all right. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll let you finish going through and then I'll ask the questions at the end.
What I can typically do, or what I do, is run through the platform. So, for your podcast listeners that wouldn't be able to see it, I can run through it if you want to. That's up to you. Which way do you want to go, Mark?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. You can try explaining it, to the people that are listening to this through the podcast, but I think people watching it would definitely enjoy it.
Okay, let's do that real quick then.
No problem. So, was that your last slide?
Yep, that was my last slide.
Okay, because I know last time you actually had some photos, I thought, or was that on your website that we actually saw what it looked like, what each of the bedrooms look like? I think that was pretty cool.
I do have that available too. So let's go through that actually. So for your podcast listeners, this is a converted house. This is a house in Atlanta, Georgia. Can you see that, Mark?
Yeah, I'm trying. Whoops, there it is. There we go. Yep, okay. Here we go.
Yeah, so this is a house in Atlanta, Georgia. It's an active pad split. And what I like to do, for your visual consumers is show what the top of the house looks like, right? So we see these houses or these rooms on the outside, kind of are surrounding the asset. I think this was one. You see, the ceiling fans are typically the traditional room. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it looks like they converted these two and maybe this room. So they really maximize this asset. But we'll take a trip down into inside of it just to see what it looks like. And the one thing I like to point out is it's very functional, right? We want to maintain functional workforce housing standards. This is not the amenities game. This is not the hospitality game. So it's not what you would typically do in a short-term rental, right? You rely on 5-star reviews. You rely on creating a crazy, intimate experience that's a little bit overwhelming. This is much more functionality. Now, it's not that we don't want to have nice finishes. I think a house like this is beautiful, but you just don't need to have those short-term rental finishes, I would say. Exposed fire extinguishers, smoke alarms, that's something that's standard for pads, but we do have some standards that are a little bit different as far as onboarding goes. But this is what you were alluding to, Mark. This is the room that they added. So for your Audible listeners, this is directly across the kitchen. This is the existing dining room area. So what they did is they walled off a section all the way down the hallway and got 2 additional bedrooms in this, what was the dining room area, right? So square footage wise, I think these rooms are about probably over 8 by 10, but pretty close to it. So smaller rooms. But again, if it's in the Atlanta market, you're probably grossing an additional $1,400 to $1,600 a month on these 2 rooms alone. So again, they converted the dining room. And the rooms are furnished in pad split. This is what the furnishing looks like. I'll talk through it real quick. So you have a bed frame with a mattress. The picture has pillows and blankets. You don't actually provide those in pad split. The members bring their own, so you don't have to keep washing them and keep up with them, which is nice. We have a small table with a light. We have art on the wall. And if you do a room conversion but don't add a closet, which I would recommend, save on some cost and time, you do need to add some sort of storage, whether that's a storage rack, a dresser, or an armoire. So again, these rooms are furnished, but they're very functionally furnished. Last time I priced mine out, I priced my rooms out for about $650, I believe, including the lock. I sourced everything on Amazon actually, and it's been really good success so far. So a couple of things I did want to talk to. I talked about the standard for pad split. So we do have some room standards we need to abide by. Each room does need to have an individual lock. I use smart locks on my door. Some people use lock and key. Some people use punch code locks. I would go smart or punch code. Keys tend to go missing. That's what I've found in my experience. So I would stray away from those. 2 areas of egress. So if you are doing a room conversion, you need to make sure that you have 2 areas of egress, which is a door and a window to the outside. HVAC, smoke alarm, smoke detector, and electricity, obviously. And that rounds out a standard pad split room that would be checked off through the program. And again, we'll walk through here real quick. And podcast listeners, the thing I'm highlighting here is the fact that all the rooms are pretty much the same. Very standardized. We want the idea to be, hotel, motel, apartment style, right? All our rooms are furnished, so we don't have people moving stuff in and out. We don't have people forgetting furniture. We don't have people digging up drywall. We want it to be very turnkey. That's kind of the goal in this investing model. And we'll pop in here to one of the common bathrooms. Nothing special here, but just to allude that, the bathroom's extremely functional. Everything looks really nice too. So Mark, any thoughts on this asset itself as a pad split?
No, I think that's great. So they did build closets. So what they did is it created a rack that you get where you said at Amazon, you create the rack. So, where they can put their belongings.
Yes, exactly. So this room does have a closet, but when I built my rooms out, both of them had racks that I bought off Amazon. Some people do dressers, some people do armoires. I thought that the price point was nice on this, and it's a little more functional than a dresser. So yeah, a good example of that would be a rack you find on Amazon.
Got it. Okay. And then they brought the HVAC vent into the unit, and the heating. So that's cool. And what do they do? So you don't run cable through the whole place. They just do like a Wi-Fi type of thing to hook into a TV if they want. Is that how you run it? Like through?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so you do provide Wi-Fi. You do not have to provide TVs in each room, right? That's sort of the amenity game that it's a fine line. I have investors who provide TVs. I have investors who don't. What we found is there's not a big markup in room rent for providing those amenities. So what I do is, I of course provide the Wi-Fi, but a lot of members who move into my houses bring their own televisions. I've had one bring their own air fryer. So typically they're going to bring what they want, and I'm fine with it. But I don't provide televisions or things like that. I don't really see the return as an investor to do it. And there's too many potential problems with the TV breaking or whatever.
Got it. So we have a question on, sorry, I just wanted somebody before the listener. I'm going to pop it up on the screen. Let's
Okay.
see if you can see that. Can you read that on the screen from
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Very advanced question too. That speaks to who your customers are, who your members are in your program. That's a
Yep.
great question. Yeah, we do have people who use the Burr model to take your initial investment out. There's a little bit of a trick behind it. So the trick is to get the single family appraised value before you add the additional bedrooms, right? So you would essentially do the Burr model, do the renovation as a single family home, have the appraiser come out, get the full extracted value, because if they see 8 or 9 bedrooms in a house, they're not going to know what to do with the appraisal. I've heard appraisals go both ways. I've heard really good appraisals on pad splits and then not great appraisals on pad splits. So in my opinion, and I have some investors and some coworkers who actually have done this. So Burr model, renovation, extract single family value at a appraisal before you add the walls later. And we do have some DSCR lending options that are national lenders who understand co-living and understand pad split. So we have some national options that I always love to refer people. I recently had a person, investor of mine in Richmond, use a DSCR loan, get great value, and was able to do a refi. So to answer your question, yes and yes, and we can provide lending options for you.
Okay, perfect. Nice. Thanks for that. Great question, by the way. If anybody else has any more questions, feel free to drop them in. So I have a question back to the property. I got a few questions on it. So, is there like a laundry room? Like, how does that work about the property? Like, how does that model? Like, how do they determine on, who uses it? Is it first come, first serve, or kind of dive into that a little bit?
Good question. We do have, laundries provided in the as far as your utilities are concerned, laundry is provided. People do have laundry rooms. I have a stackable unit in my Florida property. I have the perfect little corner for it, goes right in there. Some people do have laundry times per rooms. So you would
Yeah,
black out, room one is on Tuesday, whatever system you want to implement, you could do it. My thought is like these are working class adult people. Typically they can figure it out on their own if they want to do laundry on their own time. So I don't have any additional like you know directions applied for laundry. I usually just provide it and make sure that it's operational, and then they can figure out their own timing for laundry. It's kind of like when you were in college and you were sharing, dorm life, and you had to find out when you could use the coin operated laundry machine.
got it. Okay. So we got this other document up. So if anybody's listening to us, I'll let you go ahead.
So this is what the dashboard looks like, and I'll try to talk through it as well. The thing I want to point out is how centralized and how powerful and user friendly it is for the investor, right? So what we do is up front, we provide actually up front. This person has 10 homes. She does an amazing job. Her story is incredible. She actually moved her family to Europe and survives purely off the revenue and the cash flow that PadSplit survives. Her whole goal is to build a portfolio. She got to 10 houses within 3 years. So really, really cool to see that success story. And what we see here is you have move-ins and move-outs, right? 10 assets. She has a lot of room, so she's going to have some fluctuation here. We have people moving in and moving out. It should give you all the details about who's moving in, their financial history. You can further approve and reject them. So it gives you a little more control as the owner. We'll scroll down here, and what you'll see is an occupancy snapshot. So this shows you what your units are currently occupied at. This is a little skewed because she has 58 out of 60 rooms currently occupied, which is much higher than 89%. 5 of the rooms that are inactive and 1 pending move-in. That kind of goes into that algorithm too. But again, you see an occupancy snapshot when you log into your dashboard. You see a financial snapshot. I always like to brag on her. Well, it looks like May was actually better. So her monthly income for May was, right at $41,000, edging on $42,000 gross income just from collecting on 10 houses through pad split. So we see a financial snapshot. You have month and year indicators, and you have a little bar graph that shows you how you're performing each month. You can see she's very consistent. We'll scroll down here. You'll have dates that you can block out. If you're out of town, you don't want anyone moving in, you can black those dates out. You can set move-in days, move-in times. Again, it's very centralized to give you as much control as you could possibly want. And we'll scroll down here and we'll see her list of assets. And we'll click into one of the houses just to give you a quick look. Again, we see income and occupancy for this specific asset. We'll scroll down and we'll see who's occupying the rooms and the weekly dues that coincide with that room, as well as a picture. And I also mentioned maintenance tickets earlier. So, everyone who lives in the pad split essentially can communicate to each other through the app. They can also submit maintenance tickets through the app. So, they can, there's a wrench icon at the top. And when someone wants to say, hey, the sink is leaking in bathroom number 2, you need to address that. So you'll get that maintenance ticket, or your property management will get that maintenance ticket, and you can address it quicker. And one thing I love to talk about is, people initially say, one of the objections I get is, oh, wow, 7 people living in one house want to get torn up. And what we found is it's actually the opposite. So people who tear houses up in single family homes are typically, mothers and fathers with 2 children. I know my brother and I went through drywall and windows like it was going out of style. But when you're in a co-living facility, you share that room with other people, you share the common areas with other people, so you tend to respect it. And if you have an issue, you're going to have 7 different sets of eyeballs seeing, hey, the sink is leaking, we need to address this issue. You can now address that issue much quicker than, say, a single family rental that has a leaky sink for 2 years, and now you have a huge problem with foundation or whatever other water issues can happen. So just a little story I like to say, and it's kind of an interesting thought process and psychology that goes into that.
So I got a question on that, because you mentioned there that's kind of 7 people living in a home, right? What kind of situations, like if people don't get along, or like, hey, you know what, somebody's sitting there and they're in the kitchen, and every time they go in, like, what? Tell me how you guys handle that. Like, what? I'm assuming stuff when you have 7 people, you know, I'm sure you have some situations that pop up.
Yeah, of course. The one we always like to say is like, Jimmy ate my peanut butter, right? Like, it's always some small situation that should be easily resolvable, but you have 7 different personalities. Of course, you're going to have some natural clashing that exists. So what we do is we try to mitigate that from the front end, right? So we have the app padsplit.com where they can all communicate with each other. Typically, smaller issues get resolved through that, just through communication through the app. So they can say, hey, so and so, you left your laundry out. If you could pick that up, great. That's step 1. Step 2 is a customer service team. So if something escalates further than that, it'll actually get pushed to our customer support team. They can then, talk to the members and try to get it resolved. If it escalates further than that, if 2 people just can't live together, and we've had this situation happen, we can actually transfer one of the members to another existing pad split. So we can remove the situation from the house, kind of de-escalate everything, and move someone to another pad split, in the same town. So they're still in the same recent area, but you kind of avoid that issue. So those are 3 things we do to mitigate, people not getting along, or small fights.
Okay. All right. I have some more questions, but we'll let you finish up the dashboard here.
Oh, that's I'm done with the dashboard. Just wanted to show you the, finances, what it looks like operating a portfolio and bumping into a house, to kind of give you a good idea of what it looks like to operate it.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. So, yeah, that's really, really powerful. So back to as us as investors, or us as the homeowners, I'm thinking, like, how we would think. So those numbers are phenomenal. And I'm assuming so you mentioned you have an app. So on the app, do they communicate with each other? They communicate as a group, or how does that app kind of work? Or does it have the functionality for both?
So they communicate with each other in the house, right? So everyone who lives in the same pad split house, room 1 through 7, is on the same platform through the app. So they communicate directly to each other. If they want to submit a maintenance ticket, that's how they would communicate to you. So they can click through the app and say, hey, here's a maintenance ticket. This was submitted at this time by this member. So that's how the communication works through the app typically.
Oh, very cool. Whoops. Now tell me about, like, a couple things. Well, first of all, we're talking about 7 people, then I'll ask a few more things. So what happens if somebody stops paying? Like, what's that process? Like, how do we go? Do you guys handle eviction? Do we handle eviction? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've learned through the years we've been operational how to mitigate eviction, right? No one wants to go through an eviction. So we have some processes that kind of eliminate that. And what those are is our payments collection team being extremely bullish, right? So we're very flexible in the front end. If you need an extension to a week, if you need an extension to 2 weeks, we assess a late fee that goes directly to the investor. But then maybe someone's between jobs and they just need that little bit of buffer. Typically, providing that flexibility allows them to get back on track, and it's worked in my properties multiple times. I've had people say, "Hey, I'm going to be late, a week, and I'll pay the late fee, but I need an extension," and it's worked fine. It used to be where we were so rigid that we didn't have that flexibility, and that would result in people saying, "Well, screw it, I'll squat on the property," and then we had to go the eviction process. Right? We've actually reduced evictions about 40% through that alone. Now, the other thing we do is if someone is threatening to squat, or you might have to evict someone, what we'll do is we'll send threatening texts, emails, and calls, and really hound them and say, look, pad split is one of your last options. If you get kicked out of the pad split program, that's going to be on your permanent record, right? You're not going to be able to rent anywhere else. If anyone in an apartment or any other style like property management sees that, you're not going to have an option. Usually that's enough to get them out of the house as well. If it goes to eviction, we don't have a magic bullet for that. Again, we can mitigate it as much as we can on the front end. And I've seen these processes work on my own behalf in my own houses. But if it does go to eviction, then it is processed through the courts like any other eviction. But we have processes to avoid that. So we try as hard as we can to.
No, it's nice. We do have a question from a Facebook user. I'll let you kind of go ahead and read it out, and then you can answer it.
What is the criteria to add a
After
certain
that.
area that might not be currently offered by pad split? So I don't know if they're talking about specific locations, like if they're talking about a non-core location of ours, like maybe another small town or another small city. It's a good question. We do have a product called Pad Split Anywhere where you can essentially turn on any asset in the nation. What you don't get from that is the marketing piece that we provide. So if you're comfortable with marketing, you could still get the background checks, payment processing, use of the dashboard. You still get everything but the marketing piece. In order to open or launch a new area, we typically need to see 200 to 300 rooms, which is our unit counts, within a scheduled year. If we have that pipeline with investors, then we'll make it a strategic launch. If not, then it would qualify for a pad split anywhere.
Okay. So that's good. So that's how you go into other markets. Like you just said, you just went into the Baltimore market.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you had that. Okay, that's cool. And so what other, do you have any markets that you guys are kind of looking at moving forward that's not on the map yet that you're looking at?
Everything on the map is what we're going into currently, and they're not active yet, right? So we have Baltimore, Philly, which wasn't on the map, Kansas City, and Miami are our newest markets that we're launching this year. So anything beyond that is kind of on the periphery. We're not strategically going in there. And what I would say to the investor group is like the easiest way to utilize pad split if you're out of an area is to invest in a certain area, right? So I live in Colorado. My money goes much further in the Southeast. Pad split's functional there. It makes a lot of sense for me to take my money here and invest it in the Southeast where pad split's actually functioning. So that's my suggestion for out-of-state people. Instead of trying to force a square peg in a round hole, it's like, why not just go to where the market is essentially?
That makes sense. Okay, cool. Now let's talk about like, the jurisdictions and like, the codes and stuff like that. And like, you know, because you have like seven bedrooms, what about seven parking cars out front? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll address the parking issue. It's a great question. So what we do have with the technology and pads is the ability to lock off certain number of parking spots at a house, right? So my Atlanta property, I have 7 people living there. I don't want 7 cars in the parking lot. I don't want 7 cars on the street. That doesn't look good in any neighborhood. You're going to have issues. So what we do is we can lock off the number at say 4. So what we do in our core markets is we can now directly advertise to people who drive vehicles. Once we fill those rooms up with 4 drivers, now we shut that off and we advertise to people who use public transit or Uber. So you're not wasting any marketing dollars and you're limiting the number of parking spots at your house, which I think is a fantastic feature that really doesn't, get talked about enough. I think it's a really cool piece of technology that we offer. Always good to think about parking. Cul-de-sacs are hard because you can barely get 2 to 3 cars in a cul-de-sac. So it's good to think about parking. The more parking, the better, essentially. But you also don't want to have enough spaces and say, oh, I have 9 spaces, so I want to have 9 people here. I think it eliminates problems, kind of curbing the number of cars.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of makes sense. Now, what about like is there certain ordinance like how like some towns they're trying to push out Airbnbs. This is not an Airbnb model. It's more like why don't you kind of talk a little bit about that? Because I know that came up last time. Because the contract, right, is the rental contract with the investor is with us and your company, correct? And then you guys take care of the tenants. Is that how that works?
Yes, yeah, exactly. In speaking to short-term rental laws, I've actually had a lot of clients in areas all over the nation who are converting their short-term rental to pad split, because they're cracking down and there's so much red tape with them, and the majority of that is time frame. And also, a lot of these short-term rentals were having parties that were very loud and obnoxious, and pad split really isn't that model, right? Even though we have more people in a house, this is again the workforce. You have people who are working different hours a day. It's not a party atmosphere. It's not a congregation atmosphere. It's very individualistic, and properties tend to stay very quiet. So what we do is we actually have a 31-day minimum as a standard, then a weekly rate after that. Typically, 31 days is long enough to get us out of any short-term rental guideline. If you're in a property, or if you're in an area like Tampa, for example, where I can't remember if it's 4 to 6 months for the short-term rental guidelines, we can actually extend our lease to whatever that number is. And the reason we can do that is our average tenure is actually 10.5 months per member in our program. Again, it's the workforce. Once they find an affordable place close to their work, they tend to stay a while. So we have the flexibility to extend that if we need to, because on average, again, each tenant stays about 10 and a half months, which is really nice
Got it.
flexibility, right?
Got it. So it's with pad split is the agreement that we have, right? And that's where you're saying so it's not the individual that's staying at the property for weekly rentals or whatever. But you're saying that in your agreement they have to stay there first 31 days and then you switch it to a weekly. So they pay upfront 31 days. Is that how that works?
I believe they still pay weekly dues. They're booked for 31 days, but the first week they pay their first week's due. We also have a move-in fee assessed with each room. So if you have a property that goes live with 7 bedrooms, you can essentially it's more or less the security deposit. People can price it out to $100 or $150 that goes directly to you. So when you have a 7 bedroom house go live, you're going to get that initial deposit of $700 from each person that moved in. Every time you have a room flip, and the room becomes active, that move-in fee becomes active again too. But to answer your question, weekly dues up front, even though it's a 31-day minimum, weekly after that to provide some flexibility.
Got it. Okay, got it. So you mentioned something about, people working nights and different shifts and stuff like that. What about like somebody that wants to have their boyfriend or girlfriend come over and spend a night and hang out? Like how do you guys handle that?
We give hosts the ability to allow that essentially. If you want to allow it, I think we have tools that will give you that power. We shy away from it as a company. It typically provides problems. Individual strangers might not fight in a house, but boyfriends and girlfriends, husbands and wives and partners tend to fight more. So we try to stray away from it as much as we can. And in our house rules that are automatic when you list your property, it says no guest allowed in a co-living property. So we set that standard from the beginning and really shy away from that.
Okay, that totally makes sense because I could just imagine, you know, 'cause that, we were all young at one time when we were, renting colleges and roommates and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that environment, but it's more for the workforce. I mean, it's probably even people at that age, but
Yeah.
so the main people you want to make sure that it's like really near public transportation, as you mentioned, and also a lot of times you said a lot of people tend to use Uber.
They might. I mean, Uber's getting more and more popular. So public transportation, Uber is always good. High rental area, B and C class asset.
Right. And you don't, and you also want to keep in mind, like you mentioned earlier, because I could see this, some of these people are in the back of the head listening to this right now, like, oh, wow, I'm going to go get, I know a 6 bedroom home. But, you're going to have an issue in that nice high end neighborhood trying to create this model because all the neighbors and they're going to have some issues, I'm assuming, correct? Is that
Absolutely.
how
I
it normally
mean,
happens?
there's no denying that. You don't want to be in an HOA. Essentially, HOAs and the association can change the rules at any moment. They're sticklers about, weeds growing in the front of your driveway, which is, they serve a purpose, right? It's a necessary evil having an HOA. I live in an HOA. It's nice. But for co-living, you don't want them throwing a lien against your house, right? If they don't like it, they're going to say no to it and you won't have an option essentially. So we don't want to be in HOAs.
Got it. Okay. So we have another question here. Hi, is there a minimum of rooms to a house?
Typically, we like to see five. Five would qualify for a traditional pad split. Anything less than that would be a pad split anywhere. But if you're talking about, really maximizing the space, 3 rooms is going to be close to what single family rent is. The more you grow that unit count and the more you operate through scale, the better your net profit's going to be. Short answer is it's a minimum of 5. But you like to be from 5 to 8. 7's a sweet spot.
Got it. Now, have you seen something where somebody may have like a duplex or triplex and they've converted each units to add more? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, we have an Atlanta duplex that was, just traditional duplex. They actually got 12 rooms out of it, so 6 on each side. I think 2 or 3 bathrooms on each side too. So multifamily does work well. We also have some multifamily units in Vegas that they rent out individual suites. So it's a 5-unit complex. They rent out each suite and they get a really, really good return for it. So that's another point. If you're thinking about maximizing the space, you also want to think about private bathrooms. Private bathrooms go for a really good return on pad split and great occupancy. So when you're looking for assets, or if you have assets, it's important to think private bathrooms because those skyrocket your net profit.
Got it. So, and that's when you call them suites, then when they have their own bathroom.
Yeah,
is that what you call a suite? Or
yeah.
like a
The
master
biggest
bedroom type
ones
of
I
thing?
was alluding to have a private kitchenette and a laundry room. So that's a true suite. But a master suite in a single family home, which is just a private bathroom, that's always great to look for. I have one on my Florida property. It's awesome.
Got it. And do you ever go down and stay at these properties yourself if you're like in an area?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went and visited the property. I actually had to get a new HVAC unit put on the Orlando one. Of course, it went out right before summer hit, and I couldn't mess with that. So we had to get a $4,500 unit put on the house. So I went there and saw the work getting done. And I know some of the members, and they're great people. It's amazing to provide that, but it's also amazing to be able to communicate with them and see like, hey, we're serving a good purpose here. There's a working class person. They like living here. They're keeping, they look out for my asset too. So it's really cool to see that interaction.
Nice. So so you have to modify it. So I could like because I do a lot of like what's called sandwich lease option or seller financing strategy. So yeah, I could see this. The only thing you'd have to do is probably get some type of authorization from the seller that allow you to kind of modify the common area. So which is probably no big deal. And then you
Yeah,
just make it where they take it down if need be.
exactly. I think that's a selling point, right? You want to make sure the owner is very comfortable with what you're doing, but you can really sell them on that, temporary solution of adding bedrooms, right? They are real walls, but they're temporary. We can take them down if there's any issues and, not worry about it. But yeah, I would just make sure you're very comfortable with the initial owner, and yeah, you can definitely utilize it.
This is awesome. This is awesome. Well, I know I'm going to post a link in here. I think I have the link because you mentioned that people that are listening to this podcast or watching it will also post underneath that you mentioned something. What was it that you were going to provide? Something like was it photos or something? I'm trying to remember when we talked last time before
There's a couple
for the people,
things.
the users.
Yeah, there's a couple things. So we do provide free photos with a new, if you're a new host and you're putting your asset on PadSplit, or if you're acquiring an asset for your first one, we do free photography. So it'll save probably $350 to $400 at the end of the process. We're partnered with professional photographers that can go do a fantastic job, send them directly to you, and then availability for me. So like I provide access, I provide information and guidance. Right. Again, I'm your liaison for PadSplit. So I provided Mark with a link earlier, and I put it in the chat too, my meeting link. And essentially what that does is just give you a 10-minute phone call with me. We'll talk about your assets. We'll look how to acquire, just a one-on-one, deep process talk through of PadSplit, just to make you be successful. Even if you want to learn more, it's definitely, beneficial.
Okay. So we got the link. I think this is the same link. I'm just going to go ahead and I see
Should
that
be.
you sent it over there. All right, let me just make sure. I think it's the same one, but we'll put it there again. I think it's their toys now. So, well, Nick, anything else you want to touch base on this? I think this is great. It's always a pleasure. Anything else that we didn't ask or anything?
No, I think we covered everything. It was a good in-depth look. I just think with the affordability crisis, that demand is only getting higher, right? The economy's shaky. There's a lot of inflation going on. So you're essentially going to have a need that Pats was addressing. Short-term rentals are getting weird. There's a lot of litigation that's cracking down on those. So the medium-term co-living workforce solution, I think, is really primed to skyrocket in the next couple of years. So everyone listening, Mark, I mean, you're really getting in early. You adopted this thought process really early, and you seem to like it. So if that's your mindset, I think you're trending in the right direction with what we're doing. And I'm happy to be part of it. Again, happy to talk to you, happy to have a one-on-one sit down to exercise, and give any information I can on the model. And Mark, I want to
Yeah.
find out how to get some more deals, man. So I'm gonna have to like talk to you and figure out how to do some subject to or creative financing because I'm trying to grow my portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, we have one right now. Just before I got on the call, we're actually doing one in Idaho. We're doing an agreement for deed. Same thing.
Wow.
We're just taking it. It's a 5 bedroom home, but it's in an HOA, so it wouldn't work for this model. So yeah. So, but thanks so much for coming on, Nick. And we're going to sign off here, but I can stay at the end, chat briefly at the end. But thank you guys for listening. Again, if you like this, please share it with your friends, like it. And Nick, thanks so much, and really appreciate your time. Everybody
Absolutely.
else, see you guys later. Thanks so much.